Well, good morning, everyone. We are so blessed to have these readings before us today. As we culminate through this forgiveness, I really feel that these readings sort of try to permeate a whole idea. Now, as we go through this, we're talking about in Genesis. Now we're up to a point where Celeste had read, we see Joseph before his brothers. Now there's a whole part from last week's reading to this week's reading that we sort of skipped over because it's 4 chapters. All right, so in this story we see that finally he's interpreting dreams, right? We know that Joseph is able to interpret dreams from 2 weeks ago. Then last week he interprets dreams for who? The baker and the wine steward, right? And he foretells their future. Then we miss out on a part where Pharaoh had this dream and nobody could interpret it in all of his court. All his wizards, warlocks, demons, witches, whatever you want to call them, that work for him, that didn't know the Lord yet, were not able to interpret his dream. But Joseph, who heard about this, said, I can do it. Let me do it. So he calls him up and he has him interpret the dream, and it's about the 7 cows. Right? What happens with the cows? We have some skinny cows and we have some fat cows. And he says to him, he says, well, this is very easy. The Lord has told me that what's happening is we're going to go through a famine that's going to last 7 years. You're going to have 7 years of good and 7 years of bad. So what we need to do for the 7 years of good is store up as much as we can for those 7 years of bad. And Pharaoh is amazed by this. So then we have part of the story that we miss out on is the brothers who had sold Joseph into slavery were sent out by dad in midway through this famine. And remember, it reached throughout the world. Throughout the world. So Israel was hit by it. Syria now would be hit by it. Lebanon would now be hit by it. I mean, this is throughout the world is hit by this famine. So the father sends the brothers down to look because he heard in Egypt they have food. So he sends the brothers down there. And there's a plot by the brothers where Joseph is going to plant something and the youngest brothers is going to claim that they're spies and able to hold on to it. And in the whole time, Joseph doesn't tell him he's playing this cat and mouse game with him. He doesn't tell him, hey, I'm your brother Joseph. Because he's probably made up look like a Maybelline commercial. You know how the Egyptians and all the, we see him with all the eye makeup and the hair off on the side like Yul Brenner, et cetera, et cetera. Moses, you Hebrew slave, And so all this stuff is going on, and he gets him to this morning's reading where Joseph clears the court. He gets promoted to Secretary of State. He says in the reading, as Celeste said, I am Pharaoh's father. Secretary of State, I'm taking care of everything for Pharaoh. He looks good because of me. So he clears the room of everybody but his brothers, and he says this beautiful reading. I am Joseph, your brother, who you sold into slavery. You think you did it for bad, but God did it so that I could save you. This happens to us in every single chance that we get hurt somewhere on the road. We, at that time, do we think like Joseph in that prison saying, how dare me be cast out, or how come I'm still being persecuted for something I did 10 years ago? And we see this in a lot of homeless people today. Where they can never get up. I see this when I worked at a prison ministry, or I should say a post-prison ministry in Connecticut when I was a parish priest up there. We would have this halfway house that the church ran to give these men a chance to come back into society. And it was a great ideal of the church to help those men to get back so that we didn't see them in jail again. But it was society that wouldn't accept these poor guys back. The only jobs that we could get for these guys usually was minimum paying jobs. Couldn't be around a cash register. Nobody allowed them around a cash register because they were known felons. In our bias, we already have that in our head, don't we? If you had a business, would you let a known felon run your cash register? Probably not. Probably not. Probably not. So these poor men would often find, oh, I can go out and sell drugs. I can make more money than this, pay off my debt faster. But this time I'll be smarter. I won't get caught. They always get caught. They always get caught. But that's the unfortunate part of our society, the way it's set up. So anyway, in this, now we come to this point now that Joseph, it's about a name. It's about what we call and how we name. Now in our gospel reading, Jesus had called Peter, or called him Peter. His name was Simon. He said, I'm going to call you from now on Cephas. What does Cephas mean in Aramaic or in Greek? A rock. Could have called him Petros, right? That Peter means rock, petroglyphic. I'm going to call you Peter from now on. And the power that Jesus had was to name names and to give power by naming that name, by naming something. We see this happen also if we look back at the story of Genesis. In the famous reading in Genesis 2, that what we call Adam goes to the zoo, right? God puts Adam before all the animals. He says, okay, I want you to name all the animals. And he starts naming all the animals because God wanted him to find a helper. Not a servant, a helper. So God finally said, okay, well, he named all the names. We gave him power to name this a hippo, and this a mosquito, and this a beaver, and this a cricket, and he named all the animals for us. Okay, so he gave him power and dominion over the animals, just as Jesus had power and dominion over each and every one of us when we were named. What is your name by God? Joseph understood this power and withheld the power over his brothers to allow healing to happen to his brothers. Because he could have named them out right there and then. You bunch of jerks who threw me in a pit. He could have named them for what they did, but he didn't. He allowed them to save face before the whole court. He cleared everybody out but his brothers. He did mention what they did, just so the recollection would hit, but not to the point of saying, oh yeah, you guys are the ones that threw me in a pit. And left it at that so that the pain still hung on. Instead he said, you're the ones that put me in the pit. You thought it was for destruction, but it was for God's glory. He takes away all that. Have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, well, you did a great job, but. So you know what that but means, right? Everything that you did for a great job means nothing. It's just they're hooked on this tangent after that word but. As a parish priest, they hear it all the time. Oh, Father, that was a great sermon, but. And you went through how many years of theology training God called you into? You know what I mean? That's what I want to say. But I just put on a happy priest face. Oh, what did you think? Just sit there and I am the one that loses sleep all night. Do you think the person that used that but is going to lose any sleep? No, but do you think it's going to beat me up? Oh yeah, it is. Just that it beats in every one of us after that but. Joseph does not allow a but to come into the commercial at all, does he? And when he does the but, it's like, okay, well, you did bad things, but it was for God's glory. He put the good after the bad, so that was the thing to remember. As a Marine, that's what I always did in pros and cons. You were late 15 days to work, you beat the dog, you kissed the wife, but you did really good on the gunner's exam. What do you think he's going to remember more? That he kicked the dog and kissed the wife, or that he did good on the gunner's exam? The gunner's exam, what he's going to remember. So always try to keep the good in the end. And that's what Jesus did in the gospel reading. So in our working through a forgiveness, and you have somebody in your life right now, I can tell you right now, I know each and every one of you in your heart, if you were to close your eyes and think about that one person right now in your life that has hurt you so bad, can you do what Joseph did. You have to, according to John, on what he tried to say in the epistle reading. Because the problem is that if you're truly in love with the Lord and allowing him to show his love through you, you are mandated by God to figure out a way to get over the earthly way to say, there's got to be evenness for this crime. You're never going to get it. As we discussed about the murder that went on. There's nothing ever going to bring back that guy. Nothing. I don't care what jail sentence you do. I don't care what death penalty you do. There's nothing that's going to bring back that guy. Now, should we keep him incarcerated so he doesn't take somebody else's life? Yes. That's part of God's plan. But now, how do we work with this individual who has lost his brother? And how do we say, you have to forgive him? So maybe the conversation needs to steer like this. If you were to face him and say, you're the one that took my brother, but I'm going to work to forgive you. Every single day of my life, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to say, Lord, this person took my brother. I need you to help me to name it and to forgive him. Because you can't do it. The world will not allow you to do it. The world wants you to do an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But the Lord wants you to say, turn the other cheek and to forgive. Not to let them off the hook on their crimes that they've done against the state, but more of to the point of saying, you're going to be held accountable for what you did. But with me and the Lord, I've forgiven you and I'm going to move on now. I've got enough in my basket for today. So in this, think of that one person in your life that you need to forgive right now. And I want you to start asking the Lord on how you can verbalize through your head. Because you may not be given the chance to say it to their face. You may never be given that chance. And it may not go anywhere. You may not be given the opportunity like Joseph had to pull in the room and clear out the room and talk about it. But how are you going to work to forgive that person? Give them life. And the first part to that is this. Don't name the name of them above and to give power over above them. Accept them as your equal, that they are fallen in the world just like you are. And that's what Joseph did. He understood that his brothers were no different than he was. That it was for God's will that this time should happen, and what is he going to do about it? And take in this time that God had. So the first act of forgiveness is to save face. Save face. The second power is to name what it is, but to not take power over naming it, but more to give power by naming it. Does that make sense to everybody? To allow them to save face, that's the first thing, what Joseph did. And the second thing is not to go out and talk to anybody else or anyone else about it, because you're giving a death sentence, you're naming that person, you're killing that person. This is what Joseph is doing. Allow them to save face and to give power back to them. To love them as God loved. Because if you are truly in love with the Lord, then you have no choice but to every day pray. And it may be an everyday ordeal. To pray for them and to forgive them. Because I will tell you this, is that the Lord does say in the gospel that work through today, because tomorrow is going to have enough problems of his own. If you are constantly turning around and facing your problems of the past, you're going to stumble over everything that's put in front of you today because you're looking behind you. Everything that's put before you today, you're going to stumble over because you're not looking forward to what's going on. You're looking back to your past. If you want to truly, truly move on and forgive as a Christian should, forgive and move on. Not forgive and forget. That don't work. But forgive and move forward with what the Lord has for you today. And get so in touch with God. Allow him to name you. And get so in touch with God that he allows you to start forgiving today and ask for his guidance in forgiving them. Because you can't do it on your own. That's my prayer for you today. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.